Okay, I'm gonna get it started right now. Oh, I think my camera went off, dude.
Yeah, it did. I thought it was just part of it. Tell you about my history. So basically, I love history. I always loved California history, Chicano history, like just like that kind of stuff. And when I got to college, I had this whole goal in my mind. It's like I'm going to be a historian. I'm going to be a museum curator at a history museum. And what ended up happening was like along the way, I got really into photography. I became a really decent photographer and documenting things. And when you take photography classes, they're in the art department, and so when you double major or minor in it, which is what I did along with my history degree, you have to take not just like photo classes, you have to take like generic, like general, like intro to art history classes and other types of mediums. Like you have to take a sculpture class, drawing class, and whatever. So what ended up happening was simultaneously as I'm like doing this history degree, I'm like getting embedded in this like crazy art world, and hanging out with art students. And it was funny because our art department at the university I went to, which is the University of San Diego, is it literally in the basement of of like one of the buildings. So it was really well hidden. And so basically I just spent my time there, and I just really got into art, started like learning more about art. And then what ended up happening was like, the history of both art history and regular history just started like kind of meshing together, and it just became a passion. I just ended up liking both, and so when I graduated from college and I was still on that. I was still determined to like work at a museum as a curator, except now my focus had shifted. Now I was really into photo history and art history. Um, the options are you go to art school, so the all the master's programs for museum studies and like even an MFA, which is a master's in fine arts, if you wanted to be like basically a professional artist or professor in art, they are all at an art school, and if not in the art department of like a bigger university. So just by that trajectory, I just got like thrown into the deep end of this art world that I was like totally not. I have no background on it. My parents were never art people in that way. They were never people that like knew who Matisse was or Van Gogh or anything like that. I mean, they took us to museums and stuff, but I was never in that world. And but once I got thrown into the art world, my world just opened to a whole bunch of stuff. And basically, what ended up happening was I go through grad school, and I'm still on that trajectory. I'm going to be a curator. Found out I didn't need a PhD. I just all I needed was a museum studies degree. An emphasis of what I wanted to study on, which was photo history and California history. And then when I got out of grad school, man, the reality hits. Shit, you need a job. So, you take whatever you can get. And I tell this to anybody whoever wants to work in a museum, because everybody I meet, their idea of like the art world is either I'm going to be an artist or a curator. Like those are the two glamorous jobs, right? But the thing is, in a museum, like I found out, taking doing internships in grad school and even in grad and undergrad, there's like a lot of different jobs that get a museum going and keep it running, from public education to installation, to donate to even like donations, donor relations, fundraising, and then there's registration, which is what I'm in, and then there's collection management, and then ultimately curatorial. I took a class in grad school that was museum management class, and I basically learned those things. And I learned that there's politics, there's administration stuff that you have to learn about, like the the boring stuff that nobody ever really wants to associate with art is what I learned, and I ended up really liking that. And so when I got out of grad school, one of the first uh, jobs I had was working at the California Academy of Sciences, which is basically a natural history museum here in San Francisco. And while I was in grad school, because everybody wants to be a curator, all the curatorial internships were like the hardest to apply for and the hardest to get. Um, and also it's like really hard to do it for free. And by the time I was in grad school and trying to get a career going in museums, basically I was like a full on adult, 27, 28. I was like engaged, like I couldn't like I wasn't in a position to like, take an internship for free for a whole summer without getting paid and then not be able to pay rent. And so I really had to like kind of sacrifice not getting a curatorial internship. But the cool part was that they were, I still wanted to do an internship somehow, get my foot in the door. So the only ones that were a little bit easier to get because there wasn't a lot of interest in them was collection management internships or registration internships, which was really cool. And so I did a few internships like that where I learned like about collection management, how to handle artwork, how to look at it and know what's broken, what's not broken, how to catalog it, data, like stupid, like boring shit that you just would never think like that would exist. And it turns out that I really liked it and I was really good at it. And so, anyways, flash forward, I'm at the California Academy of Sciences. I get this job where literally my job is to process and catalog artwork that's at this natural history museum because they're a natural history museum. They didn't know what the hell to do with artwork. And so they hired me to basically figure out to help them what to do with it, whether it was to find a way to keep it, find a way to donate it, or transfer it to another museum that was a better home for it. And that was my job. And then it, the project was created by the CFO of the museum, who's basically the accountant, like the head financial person at a museum. And but they also doubled as the chief of staff of the museum. So I randomly was hidden in the finance department. So I'm sitting in cubicles with like accountants and financial advisors and stuff. But my whole job was cataloging art. But I got to be in a lot of rooms, like a lot of where I got to see decision making get made by directors and legal. And like we went through like all different crazy stuff, that I got to witness that normally people like me wouldn't have been able to do if I had done regular internships or an entry level job. So I ended up falling in love with the most of the administrative aspect of a museum, and I decided that what I was really good at and probably going to be better at was being a museum director, and not necessarily like the curator who like reads and writes and researches. Um, and so that was it. So from there, I finally I needed to get back in the art world, so I left the academy and I got a job at the registration department over at the SF MoMA, and then that's where I'm at. That's where I've been since.